we're going to begin, as I mentioned, with a little recap of the New York City mayoral debate, the first New York City mayor's debate, election day, November 4th. Zohran, Curtis Sliwa, and Andrew Cuomo will go head to head to see who will be the next mayor of New York City, who will be the mayor of the largest city in the country. At the time of this
This is
recording, Zohran leads by 21 points, I believe it is. He's at 49%. Andrew Cuomo is at 28%. And Curtis Sliwa is at 19%, if I recall correctly. There was also a weird poll that came out earlier today. It was a Gotham City AARP poll that said if Curtis Sliwa were to drop out, Andrew Cuomo's chances of winning balloon to like 40.5%, whereas Mamdani's drops to 44.6% or something. And that so conveniently just happened to be within the poll's margin of error. I'm a little I'm a little skeptical on this because of the methodology. We don't know who was polled. If it's an AARP poll, you would think that it was a fair amount of older individuals. Additionally, the sample size was actually decent. It was at a little bit more than 1,000 people, but typically the larger a sample size you have, the smaller the margin of error. Traditionally, polls will have a margin of error of 4% when the sample size is closer to 600, 500. A poll with a sample size of 1,000 people, like this Gotham City AARP poll, typically has a margin of error of 3%. Of course, this is a schizophrenic hallucination. Neither one of these two individuals is dropping out of the race. Curtis Sliwa deserves to be in this race because he won the Republican nomination. And Andrew Cuomo is a narcissistic fucking loser who lost in the Democratic primary and refused to drop out. So now he is instead running as an independent. One thing I want to say before we begin, and I'm actually going to be a little complimentary here, is it's about Curtis Sliwa. I've been familiar with Curtis Sliwa. He's the most prominent Republican in the New York City political sphere. I disagree with him fundamentally on everything, virtually everything, but I do have a newfound respect for him after this most recent election cycle. Just because he's a Republican, just because we have ideological disagreements, does not mean that I have to inherently hate him. In fact, a lot of my hatred for the Republican Party comes from their inauthenticity. And Curtis Sliwa, for all of his faults, in my estimation, is a principled Republican. So it seems. He cares about New York City. He cares about his fellow New Yorkers, much like Zohran Mamdani does. And the passion for both of them does come across when they talk in the interviews they do. Their policy prescriptions are obviously complete anathema to one another, but I do think that Curtis Sliwa is a non-detestable Republican. Every so often, I encounter one of these individuals like they're a rare Pokemon. Thomas Massey is one of them with how he's stood up to Donald Trump and bucked the MAGA movement. Again, I don't agree with these individuals ideologically on anything, but I do think that it's nice to remember that there can be Republican politicians who who actually care about the people that they're supposed to represent. So many people in the Republican Party, more so on the Democratic Party, just are cucked to the oligarchy. And in Curtis Sliwa's case specifically, he was offered $10 million to drop out of the race, and he refused because he genuinely believes in himself and he cannot be bought. I respect that a lot. As I mentioned, I have a newfound respect for him. I'm still ride or die for my boy Zohan, but if someone put a gun to my head and forced me to vote for either Andrew Cuomo or Curtis Sliwa, I would still not vote for either of them, and I would let that person kill me. But I think for a second, I would think that Curtis Sliwa would be equally as bad for New York City as Andrew Cuomo would be. I don't think, obviously, I think Zohran is the best candidate, but that's more so of a dig towards Andrew Cuomo that he can't put together a policy prescription that is better than the only Republican running in the race. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at some of these. Let's take a look at some of these highlights. Zohran absolutely crushed this debate. As I said with Curtis Sliwa, I have a newfound respect for him. Andrew Cuomo needs to get the fuck out of politics. This guy is so fucking bad at this. He can't even talk shit effectively. His policy prescription is a goddamn nothing burger. He was getting dunked on by both Zohran and Curtis Sliwa. It was a sight to behold.
Not a job for a first timer. Any day you could have a hurricane, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing,
Cuomo.
people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience. Yes. I would make it clear.
The hatred for Andrew Cuomo is coursing through him. Let the hate run through you, Anakin. That is what I see in Zohran's eyes when he is put face to face with Andrew Cuomo. It's like if you go back and you watch LeBron in Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. That look that he has, staring at the Boston Celtics, at Paul Pierce, at Kevin Garnett, that is what Zohran is doing to Andrew Cuomo. And rightfully so, because Andrew Cuomo is an abhorrent, detestable, immoral, gross, disgusting human being who should have never removed him, who should have never have brought himself out of exile, especially to run for political office in a place he doesn't live. He's not a New Yorker. I mean, he geographically he is a New Yorker because he lives in the state of New York. I mean, he's more of a New Yorker than Eric Adams is, definitely. But he lives in Westchester. Both Sliwa and Zohran live in New York City.
To the president that I am willing to not only speak to him, but to work with him if it means delivering on lowering the cost of living for New Yorkers. That's something that he ran his presidential campaign on, and yet all he's been able to deliver thus far has been prosecuting his political enemies and trying to enact the largest deportation program in American history.
When it comes to executive experience, I've run the Department of Housing and Urban Development, built housing all across the nation. I was governor for 11 years. The budget is double what it is in New York City, and I got government to work. I passed groundbreaking laws, minimum wage, paid family leave, built projects that had never been built before. This is no job for on-the-job training.
I like Andrew Cuomo trying to flex his credentials, and all he's doing is reminding the audience that he did bare minimum as the governor of New York State. Raising the minimum wage is literally the bare minimum. Paid family leave is the bare minimum. When he legalized same-sex marriage, the bare minimum. And he wasn't the first to do that, mind you. Gavin Newsom was marrying same-sex couples like 6 years or so before it got legalized in the state of California, basically sticking a middle finger to the court saying, come arrest me for marrying these people. Andrew Cuomo is not an extraordinary governor by any means whatsoever. It doesn't matter what your experience level is if all of your experience is rooted in being an establishment corporate Democrat.
Fought Donald Trump. He investigated me repeatedly with the Department of Justice. the Department of Justice Inspector General said that it was actually politically motivated. That does not back me up. When I'm fighting for New York, I am not going to stop. And I'll tell you something else. If the Assemblyman is elected mayor, Donald Trump will take over New York City.
I've had a love-hate.
I don't know what that means. Like, Donald Trump is going to take over New York City. Yeah, just like how he's taken over Chicago and LA and Portland. And oh my God, it just fucking goes on and on. Andrew Cuomo was, and we covered this on the show, at a billionaire or a millionaire fundraiser in Southampton during the summer, a few months ago. And he was caught on tape talking about potentially asking President Trump for his help in defeating Zohran Mamdani. That doesn't sound to me like you're willing to stand up to the president. I don't give a fuck that you protected New Yorkers from Donald Trump. Again, this is actually the bare minimum. And at the time, Donald Trump was not trying to kidnap. He was not trying to kidnap the entirety of the Hispanic population across the country. Andrew Cuomo is compromised. He has no business being the mayor of New York City. His policy plan is disastrous. He's already tried to compromise with the president. He has ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He's a serial sexual abuser with which both Curtis Sliwa and Zohran Mamdani fucking banged him over the head repeatedly, rightfully so. It's just, he needs to go away. He needs to go away.
Relationship with Donald Trump that goes back over 30 years. But I know one thing. We have Andrew Cuomo. We have Zohran Mamdani. They want to take on Donald Trump. Look, you can be tough, but you can't be tough if it's going to cost people desperately needed federal funds. Zohran Mamdani, the president, has already said it's going to take $7 billion out of the budget right from the start if you're elected mayor. People are going to suffer in this city. People who need those federal funds. What I would do is sit and negotiate.
So for the voters tuning
That's
in tonight,
so to say that, to talk about Donald Trump pulling funds and not even mention how ridiculous it is that the president is doing that. It's just a slap in the face to the voter. Everyone who hears about the president withholding federal funds goes, that's kind of fucked up that you're taking money away from these places simply because they don't agree with you politically. And you're doing it over things that aren't even illegal. Like what the states are doing in fighting back against Donald Trump, whether it be with the deployment of the National Guard or ICE, they're not doing anything outwardly illegal. It's unjustifiable for the president to withhold that funding in that regard. Like Donald Trump saying that he's going to pull $7 billion from the budget if Zohran gets elected, before he gets elected, it's clearly political motivation. And it's a shame that Curtis Sliwa can't denounce that. I understand that as the mayor of New York City, as the governor of a state, as the mayor of a city or the governor of a state, you are expected to work with the president of the United States. I don't think Zohran should just entirely close off communication with the president. That's fucking silly. But you don't have to always work with them if what the president is proposing is detrimental to your community. Let's take Florida, let's take Louisiana, for example. Let's say you're the mayor of Tampa or you're the mayor of Baton Rouge. You should not negotiate with the president about FEMA when he's actively talking about dismantling FEMA and rediverting those federal funds elsewhere. FEMA is a crucial organization that helps overwhelmingly states like Louisiana and Florida because they get ass fucked by natural disasters. It would be in state leadership's best interest to fight for FEMA if that means going against the president.
Mr. Mamdani, what do you believe about Hamas and how lasting peace will be achieved? We know it's a complicated matter, but we'd like you to keep your answer to a minute if you could.
Of course, I believe that they should lay down their arms. I'm proud to be one of the first elected officials in this state who called for a ceasefire. And calling for a ceasefire means seizing fire. That means all parties have to cease fire and put down their weapons.
I don't think in any way the assemblyman is representative of the Muslim community, which is a vital community in New York City. And
Put this next to when Joe Biden said, "You're not black if you don't vote for me," because this is an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. Reminder, they talked about Israel for like what felt like 35 minutes. When I tuned into the debate, I tuned in a little bit late, but when I did when I did check in, they were of course talking about Israel, and they just continued to fucking talk about Israel. For whatever reason, the moderators think that New Yorkers give a shit about Israel. They don't. No one in New York gives a fuck about Israel. Nobody in the United States gives a fuck about Israel. Do you know why? Because they live in the fucking United States. New York Jews don't care about Israel to the same degree that the moderators think they do. Because if they did, they would fucking move there. Do they care about, Israel as it relates to Judaism? Yes, but they care more about fixing the affordability crisis in New York City.
And I am very fond of, and I've been working with. I think he's playing his own politics. Many of his positions don't even follow the Muslim faith, so I see them as two totally separate things.
You know, it took Andrew Cuomo being beaten by a Muslim candidate in the Democratic primary for him to set foot in a mosque. He had more than 10 years, and he couldn't name a single mosque at the last debate we had that he visited. And what Muslims want in this city is what every community wants and deserves. They want equality, and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even see those Muslims as part of this city.
Zohran Mamdani, his policy does not actually align with the Muslim faith. Bro, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? And guess what? If they did align with the Muslim faith, you dipshits would be saying, we would be bitching and moaning about the separation of church and state, which, yes, I agree with. And that's why it's a good thing that Zohran's policy is not tied to any individual religion, regardless of if it's Islam, if it's Christianity, if it's Judaism. His policy is his policy, which, I mean, if we want to open up that can of worms, like, socialism is more akin to the actual teachings of Jesus Christ than anything else. But some people are not ready to have that conversation yet. Just stop showing them talking. What the fuck? All right, I guess I'll read it to you guys. What the fuck? Mamdani versus Cuomo, frontrunners spar on affordability, housing, and more. Ex-Governor Cuomo also slammed Mamdani for backing decriminalization of prostitution in New York City. I don't know why. This is like, oh my god, people are so fucking, they're so fucking silly. The worst thing that could happen is if the assemblyman's proposal for legalizing prostitution went through. Decriminalization is not the same as legalization. These are two fundamentally different things. Decriminalization, although it's technically not legal, there is not a punishment for it. Weed was decriminalized before it was legal. What's the issue with prostitution being legalized? What's the issue with sex work being a legitimate and regulated industry, so that way women who consent to doing these types of acts are protected if something is to happen to them? Prostitution is legal in Amsterdam. They claim that there's going to be more sex trafficking if prostitution is legalized, if prostitution is decriminalized or legalized. And I can only ask them, why do you not understand, like, that still exists now and these women have no recourse in that situation because what they're doing is illegal and they could potentially go to jail for it? Also, prostitutes are marginalized. They're marginalized themselves. They're assaulted, they're raped, they're murdered, and they don't see any justice because what they're doing is illegal. They're afraid to come forward because of the illegality of what they're doing, an act that they have been coerced into doing. Calling allegations ironic, Mamdani accused Cuomo of spreading falsehoods. Quote, I am not, and nor have I ever, called for the legalization of prostitution. I don't know where this came from either. Like, I fucking woke up today and everyone was talking about it. I did see an AI generated video of, I think it was Bill de Blasio and Zohran Mamdani, that was posted by a pro Cuomo PAC that talked about this, but this was never a major talking point for Zohran. Regardless of whether he believes it or not, you're not winning an election with this kind of policy. It's fucking stupid. Again, people are paying $5,000 a month to live in a 3-bedroom apartment in the Upper East Side. Focusing on affordability is the right call. My policy is to take on sex trafficking, have zero tolerance for violence against women. And you have that type of ability when you decriminalize something. You're able to actually treat it as a legitimate industry. Something really funny happens, or has been happening recently, with Andrew Cuomo, and he likes to highlight Zohran Mamdani's lack of experience. He claims that Zohran has never had a job and that your resume says you interned for your mother, which I think is rich coming from Andrew Cuomo, because his first job out of college was being the campaign manager for his fucking dad in 1982. 82? 84? I think it was 82. Out of college, Andrew Cuomo only was able to break into politics because of his father. And every position he has held since then has been in government, whether it was an appointed position or whether it was an elected position. So I don't understand what his line of attack is. But also, Andrew Cuomo's campaign has just been dog shit. He had that famous picture of him in some kind of park. I don't know if it was Central Park, where he's posing with a picture of Hassan Piker with the caption that says "America deserved 9/11," and the still picture of it makes it look like that Andrew Cuomo is endorsing Hassan Piker. But Cuomo has the same issue that all of the other corporate Democrats do, and it's that they don't know how to message to anybody, because the only people that they're used to talking to are hyper wealthy individuals. They don't understand how to craft and deliver a message that would resonate with people outside of a donors only event, which is why Cuomo always resorts to talking about Zohran and not about Cuomo's political position, because again, he has none. As an establishment Democrat, his whole political lens is don't vote for them, vote for me, because they're bad and I'm not bad. They always portray themselves as the lesser of two evils. When you're running in a national election, when you're running against a Republican representative, senator, even the president, that messaging resonates. But not when you're running to be the mayor of New York City against an extraordinarily popular member of your party.